Good afternoon and welcome to the press conference. First, my hope is that all of you members of the press have received a press packet, which includes the letter that we sent to the commissioner and several other items that would inform your reporting on this matter. I would begin by saying that we call this press conference at this particular juncture because it's appropriate now to report to the residents of Oakland through you as members of the press corps where we are at this point. Over the last several months, many of you have inquired with respect to the process that we entered into, and we have not commented because at the very outset of the process that I will outline momentarily, we came to an agreement that we would operate confidentially, that we would not communicate through the press, that in that relationship that we would minimize politicizing of the situation, maximize a candid conversation that would allow us to explore substantive items in a very thoughtful way. We indicated that we would make no attempt to address them through the press, to use the media as a political tool, because we felt confident that the extent to which we could put on the table substantive, thoughtful options, that they would make decisions on the merit and not on the gamesmanship. And I think it's been a minor miracle that we've come to this point with minimal press exposure on the matter. I think that speaks volumes to the people who were involved in this process on both sides of the table. That said, as prefacing remarks, I would begin with this. In March of this year, my distinguished colleague to my left, the President of the City Council, President James Brunner, and I said, let's come together and develop a strategy to maximize Oakland's effort to keep the A's, because that's clearly the overwhelming consensus of people in Oakland, that they wanted to keep the A's, that they identify with the A's. As a result of that, we drafted a letter and signed it and sent it to Commissioner Bud Seeley. I believe on the 30th or in the latter part of that month, the 17th is when we wrote the letter, but I think on the 30th, Bud Seelig appointed a 3-person commission. He responded very favorably to our letter. Our letter was, we wish to keep the A's. We would like to sit down and talk with you about the possibilities, and we're prepared to do whatever we can do within the realm of pragmatism to maintain the Oakland A's in Oakland. His response was to appoint this commission. Their mission was to provide him with intermediate reports and a final report on the conversation that would take place among the 3 members and those of us on our side of the table. So their mission has been a fact-finding mission to report back to Commissioner Seeley. On our side of the table, it included distinguished members of the City Council, members of the private sector, members of our staff, congressional representatives from Barbara Lee's office and Senator Boxer's office, who maintained assiduous attendance at these meetings, and all appropriate staff on our part. That's been a consistent approach. I think I can say without fear of contradiction that on both sides of the table, we all felt that we were in a substantive, real conversation, and we were engaged in a substantive and real process. The framework for the conversation was as follows: that the they on that side of the table, still to be determined, that they could be the owners of the Oakland A's, or Major League Baseball, or a combination thereof, would take responsibility for building the stadium. On our side of the table, the public side of the table, there were at least 3 items that they would look to us to address: land, infrastructure, and parking. And that could be financed at a variety of different levels. This was never a negotiation, but rather a fact-finding mission on the commissioner's side and our laying on the table what we thought were appropriate and substantive options that would put Oakland in a favorable light. The commission was looking at 3 cities: Fremont, San Jose, and Oakland. In that context, we placed the Coliseum was always on the table because that had been a beginning point for a number of years. What we did was to place 3 additional options on the table: waterfront options that we felt were viable. We talked about the pluses and the minuses. We talked about the circumstances surrounding each one of them so that they could take an objective assessment. We looked at possible funding mechanisms and vehicles that could go all the way from the federal government down to the city. I might just say parenthetically, in anticipation of a question, Oakland's budget deficit has been in the area of general funding. It has never been contemplated that general funds would be used in this context at all. So I just want to take that off the table, all right? And so we're down to these 3 items. Where we are at this moment is that we said to them, and they agreed, we would provide you with all of the necessary information short of negotiation, allowing you to give to the commissioner the most accurate picture of Oakland's options that be placed on the table. At the point at which the powers that be make the judgment that they would be prepared to enter into a negotiation with Oakland, and that's obviously our hope because we think we've put ourselves forward in a very faithful way, including the business community's support and the broader community support. We're all unified here at the political level, so we've presented them with a unified front. At that point, we would then enter into a process that would allow us to negotiate in very substantive terms to ultimately be ratified by my colleagues on the city council that would deal with land, with infrastructure, and with parking. This process of finalizing their report, answering any last-minute questions, will be concluded by no later than mid-December. So we're right upon that. I would say that as we speak, they're in the process of finalizing their report. That report will be made based on that timeline sometime in January. And once that report is made, they've gone through their exercise, I'm assuming then that they would in turn respond to us. Our obvious hope is that they would respond favorably. Finally, I would just like to say this. While this has been about keeping the A's, that's not solely what this is about. It's also been about building a new stadium, but that's not solely what this is about. It's also about the economic development and viability of Oakland going forward and Oakland being a destination city. That said, the 3 options that we placed on the table, as many of you know who've been students of Oakland going forward,